I'm Britt Bingold, and you are listening to Season 4 of Learning Unlocked. Welcome to Learning Unlocked. Educators are the key holders to unlocking learning for students. Today, as always, my goal is to provide you with resources and tools, the keys, to enable and accelerate learning for all students. Let's get started. Hey, it's Britt. Before we get going today, I want to do a quick reminder that if you have time to rate us or write us a review on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it. The more reviews and ratings we get, the more educators will see our podcast. So if you like what you're hearing and you think other educators would too, please head over and provide us a review. Thanks, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to episode 34 of Learning Unlocked. Today, I am welcoming back my colleagues Wendy Peterson and Salce. We are going to place a magnifying glass on teaching in the fourth quarter and what that can look like, and hopefully give you some ideas how to do some painless pivots to make sure that you end in a positive and productive way, moving into summer and then obviously moving into next school year. So welcome back, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
So as teachers come back from spring break and they are moving towards what we're calling the
Beginning of the end.
Nice.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. We wanted to take time to discuss ways that they can painlessly pivot in order to finish out this year strong. Before we discuss the 3 different pivots we came up with, I want to talk about the terms painless and the term pivot because we kind of put those together. Now, the 3 of us, really do like a good alliterative phrase.
And we like words.
And we like,
Just
in general, we like words. So I think it's a good time to talk about how do we land on these terms for this podcast and how do they kind of remind us of those feelings and emotions that we as teachers have, even as instructional specialists have, going into this last quarter, that final sprint to the end, it feels like. So let's talk about first the term painless. Why do we focus on this term in our conversation today, the word painless?
Well, because this is the time of year when the last thing anybody wants to think about is something new, something different.
Something added.
Yes. So we wanted to focus on it being painless because we wanted teachers to feel like it was something they could reasonably do in this final sprint to the end.
Right, without causing more pain.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of people are in pain right now. I don't think we can deny that. So we don't want to add pain. We want things to be painless.
Nice. And then we put that with the word pivot. Why did we decide on that pivoting word instead of change or readjust or something? Like, why did that word kind of stand out to us in fourth quarter?
Well, as a former dancer, I do still dance, so I guess it's not former. I love the word pivot because it doesn't, one of your feet is staying the same.
Yes.
You are just switching the angle of your body, really. And so it's not upending all of you. You're not taking a leap. You're just turning. And so to me, it's so graceful and such a graceful and beautiful.
You're really quite brilliant, Wendy.
Oh, thank you.
Because when you say that, when I think of pivot, I think pivot in this aspect, especially in this quarter, it's also about beginning to open up our minds to next year while still keeping one foot grounded in this year. And so how do we painlessly make those pivots?
Right. And it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I know I'm mixing all kinds of metaphors here now. So it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's simply saying we're going to just make a turn, a slight turn. Let's do some more metaphor mixing. It's you're not making a hard right in your car. You're just, what does my GPS guy say? Wending to the right or something.
Well, I think about a ship too. if we're just going to keep going with metaphors, I had written down that our ship for the year is on its course.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do at this point in
You
the
can't
year
make a hard
to
change.
turn this ship around.
You
It
cannot
is steadily
turn the Titanic around.
Mm-hmm.
so adjusting or guiding it ever so slightly in the right direction.
And I think that goes back to Painless, right? If we are a dancer or if we are on a ship and you make a sharp turn,
Not good.
you can cause pain, right?
Injury.
You can sink the ship.
You can sink the ship. You can injure yourself as a dancer. So I think when we're talking about this last quarter, we wanted to recommend ways to painlessly pivot where you still have one foot on the ground, but you're just opening up your body enough to some new ideas that can help regulate, reset, refresh you into quarter four. So our first pivot uses a metaphor because golly, we haven't had enough of those already in the first 5 minutes of the podcast. But we like food a lot in this office, especially anything that's sweet. And we have a new pastry shop. So we're going to go ahead and just call out right now.
Are we just calling it out?
We're calling it out, and I'm going to tag them.
Rise Up Bakery. I am so totally addicted.
Mm-hmm. If you're in Arizona, it's located in Gilbert on
Higley and Guadalupe, the northeast corner.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my goodness, everything was delicious, but I have become addicted to these things called Queen Amans. But it's like Kouign or something. You'll know it when you see it.
Yep.
Oh my word.
Yep.
So
and I would just like to say the chocolate chip scone is to die
But what
for.
did you have the other day too? And you said, "Oh, I might like that better than the chocolate." Oh, the cookie. What's it called? It's like the overachieving cookie.
Over it. No, wasn't it everything but the kitchen sink cookie?
No.
Those
Yeah.
okay, apparently we eat a lot of cookies here because we're
So today this podcast is sponsored by Rise Up Bakery, because we are, as you all know, fans of coffee, and what goes better with coffee than pastry. And so I think when we were talking about our first pivot, we were, I think, having Rise Up pastries. Julia and I, especially Julia, was like, we need to talk about moving and pivoting from eating pastries all the time to eating pasta. And we're going to talk about what those terms mean. So pastry in this metaphor is representing what?
unhealthy indulgences.
Okay.
But let's make sure that we know that we do need to indulge sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I want to make that clear that we're not stopping our trips.
I don't think anyone's going to say that since we just endorsed a bakery. I think they know.
And I think the idea of unhealthy indulgence is just that we're still going to, and you'll see with the connection in the next one, we're still talking about indulging.
Yeah.
Yes. We believe in that wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm. And then what do we mean by the term pasta in this metaphor?
Productive indulgence.
Okay.
Pasta has a lot of fuel. You have to not overeat it, as we are wont to do sometimes. But it has fuel to keep you going.
It energizes you.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about our first pivot, we are going to be painlessly pivoting from what we like to call as pastry to pasta in our teaching careers. And that's hopefully going to help with balance, which seems to be something people are really trying to seek in this profession, is balancing those types of, like, my teaching career with my home life, with my whatever, with what we call our second shift, right? You go all day to teaching, and then our second shift is our home life with our children, sometimes for us, or homework, or making dinner, or whatever your second shift is, right? So let's start, ladies. How can we painlessly pivot from pastry to pasta to help with balance?
One of the things, and I'm still talking food here for a minute, but I'll get to.
I think the metaphor will help.
But the metaphor helps. So if you told me that I could never go to Rise Up Bakery again, if I could never have a Queen of Monarch scone again, I would just rebel. So remember, it's not saying this is something that you have to leave forever. It's saying that you're just making a slow turn or adjustment. And so I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna, but it's being able to look on the bright side, maybe, that I'm not going to have this pastry right now, but it's okay. I'm going to have this pasta. So I may not have reached every single child as much as I wanted to, but let's look at my growth scores. They did grow, even though this was a difficult year.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think about looking at, as teachers, what we indulge in, what we feed off of. And we want to make sure that we are feeding off of things that still feel indulging, but they're productive. They energize us. They take us somewhere. So an unhealthy indulgence is going to feed apathy and negativity. A productive...
Stop. You got to say that again.
An unhealthy indulgence is going to feed apathy and negativity.
Yeah. It's like when you have too much sugar and you get kind of like on that sugar crash and then you're just irritable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a productive indulgence is going to energize you or inspire you. So both are indulging, but it's indulging in a way that you feel like it was worth it and you're happier because of it. Sometimes we indulge in those unhealthy things because they're right in front of us and we just want to eat the whole box, which Wendy and I've never done.
Ever done that.
But I never come out of one of those feasts on all of those pastries at one time. I never come out of that feeling super great. Right. Both physically and mentally. So what does this mean for teaching? I think it's recognizing those things that we might be indulging in that are making us feel pretty negative and trying to switch to what can we indulge in that's going to inspire and energize us.
What would that be specifically? Do you have any specific examples of what that might be?
Well, I think it's like, sorry.
You're fine. No, I think we're going the same direction. I think what we need to address is this idea of self-care here. What about self-care? Is self-care a pastry or is it a pasta or is it both? And how do we balance those?
Well, I think so self-care, when I think of it, it's one of those terms that's been thrown around so much.
It's a total buzz term.
I don't even want to hear it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like the new normal.
Let's say taking care of yourself. So I think we have a choice in how we approach self-care. We can feed off of unhealthy things. Things that feel like a to-do list or something more to do, or we can feed off of things that are beneficial and actually improve our life. And so one of the things that I personally think of, going back to Wendy asking for an example, an unhealthy indulgence is perhaps getting too caught up or falling down the rabbit hole of negative social media, right? As teachers, there's a lot of good and there's a lot of great stuff, and there's absolutely a need for being able to express our emotions, and there's a place for that. But we have to watch that that's not the only place we're visiting. So instead, a productive indulgence might also be to make sure that for all of the people that you follow who, wallow's not the right word because that's not what I mean, or who might wallow with you.
Yes.
Follow that same amount or same number of people who are posting inspiring or research-based strategies or things that energize you
or who
challenge you to come to your job energized and excited rather than still feeling negative or yucky because maybe you ate too much.
You ate too much sweet either way, or you ate too much pasta either way. That's why there's a good balance. I feel like that's why we chose those two. I also want to talk about with balance. A lot of it has to do with pressure that we put on ourselves in teaching. So I think sometimes eat too much pasta and not enough pastry. And
I'm liking this train of thought.
I know.
And I think there needs to be some pullback as well when we're looking at painlessly pivoting, because again, we're not going to just throw out everything we've done. The ship is going, we're moving along, but how can we balance a little less pasta? Because there's those of us that are like, I'm setting hard boundaries. I'm not going to grade at all this week. No, that's too much pastry. Girlfriend, you got to, that's part of your job. You got to grade.
Yeah, definitely.
But then there's other people that are like drowning in the pasta, the meat of it all. I'm grading every single thing,
It's hard, but I'm going to work harder.
I'm going to try. I just saw this strategy and this strategy and this
strategy and this strategy.
And I'm going to try them all right
Too much pasta. So we've got to look at, and this is really, there's not really an answer because it's going to be different for every individual and how people work. But my concern is, I guess, that we're doing too much of one and too much of the other. Right. And there are good things in both. We love that teachers are coming up with new strategies. We love that you're setting some personal and work boundaries. There has to be a balance that needs to be worked. And I think if you add that food metaphor, if you think about it in food, I think it helps people realize, oh, if I did a balanced diet, it's almost like I need a balanced mental, educational, teaching diet.
And I mean, as part of the self-care, I think we have to remember that balance has become a buzzword too. And how, everybody knows we should live a balanced life.
Right.
We should
have a
eat
balanced diet.
Everything should be in balance. That is much easier said than done. But there's a self-awareness that I think needs to be developed around this, some reflection. And so sometimes teachers will say to me, oh, Wendy, I'm so embarrassed to admit that today I just had my kids sit and read for 15 minutes. I'm so embarrassed to admit, yeah, we've all done those things. If part of your everyday routine is don't talk to me and go sit and do a packet of worksheets, or if every day your routine is free talk, or that's not good. But if that occurs occasionally, you're all right. Definitely not advocating bad practices, but we're all human, and acknowledgement, reflection, like Julia said, and then moving on, I think is the key to that balance.
So I want to reference an article, and we're going to post it with the show notes. It's from Corwin Connect. It's called This Year, Take Self-Care Off of Your To-Do List. And I really liked that title. And so I think just to wrap up this idea of pastry and pasta and balance, I'm just going to mention the 6 ways of being, and then they can read the article if they would like to. But I think, we talk about self-care as like those moments where you have to stop and you have to do self-care, get in the bath or whatever. And this article is talking about ways of being in general. If you can create these habits of being, you won't need to do these moments of self-care because you'll be being self-care all the time. You'll have that self-care philosophy. So the first one, and I think it's funny that Julia said this, is being more reflective. The second one is being intentional. The third is being empathetic. The fourth is being connected. The fifth is being accountable. And the last one is being equitable. And so the article goes through and talks about ways to do this for yourself as a teacher, as a person. And that way, if you do these by nature, you will also help your students by proxy. So I really thought that that was a great way to talk about, hey, if we just be some of these things and work towards being these things, we can take the idea of self-care off of our list.
And I have to note that I find this list very balanced, because some people see self-care as being overly self-indulgent. And when this talks about being empathetic, that means that I care how other people feel. I'm able to feel with them, accountable. So self-care could be for me, like, I don't want to pay any of my bills, and I'm never going to clean my house. And okay, that's not accountable. I have to at some point realize that I have to pay my bills. Parts of my job need done. Whether I feel like
doing it or not,
grades in the grade book, or whether I feel like writing a lesson plan, those are really not options as part of my self-care.
Okay, so we're moving from pastry to pasta. That was really about kind of the teacher for themselves to look inward, to reflect, to help find that balance. Again, you got to pivot. Again, remember the word pivot. This is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen while you sleep. You're not all of a sudden going to wake up and be like, today I'm accountable, equitable, and also empathetic. So just remember, these are short pivots and just painless, like just bite size. So the next painless pivot we want to discuss is moving towards less problem solving in this fourth quarter to more possibility creating. Problem solving is absolutely nonstop in a teacher's day. Research was conducted in the 80s and the 90s that stated that teachers make 1,500 decisions a day.
And I believe it.
And that equates to about 3 decisions per minute in an 8-hour workday. They say it's more than surgeons have to make in a day. And honestly, that was in the 90s. So let's just talk about how much more that probably is now.
Let's just talk about managing smartphones.
Yeah.
Alone.
Right.
In the class, in the learning environment.
Oh my
How many
goodness,
extra
yes.
decisions?
So many extra decisions. So it is all exhausting. You know, I think there's a huge decision fatigue happening too with all of us in life right now. There's a lot of things we have to flux post this coronavirus pandemic. And so emotionally and physically and mentally, I think our go-to for a lot of people is control. How can I problem solve this? I need to fix it. I need to control it. Where is my toolbox? And I think what's going to be the most painless pivot and what might actually release a lot of stress from the teacher and the student, but to look at those problems as possibilities. So I wanted to talk about teachers that are in that mindset of fix it mode right now, whether that's like, I still can't manage this class and it's fourth quarter and I feel like a failure. Like, no, stop. That's not the mindset. Or I can't catch all these students up. They've been absent all the time. How do I fix it? We need to look at these problems as opportunities to create new possibilities. So I'm going to give you guys 4 scenarios, and I would like you guys to discuss if there's ways to see these problems as possibility opportunities. So for example, let's say the copier jams.
It never happens
Never.
here.
Never.
What new possibility takes the stage instead of whatever you were copying? So if you were copying a handout, a quiz, note sheet, guided notes, what possibility now? Let's say you can't copy that.
Well, this one I think is.
We're both looking at
I
each
know.
other right
Like,
now.
who's
Like,
gonna
who's
jump in?
going?
Okay, so whatever it is that we're copying
Mm-hmm.
can be done a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But it's stressful because
it
it's
is
not
stressful.
the plan.
It
So
is
how
not-
do we
it is
step?
not the plan.
How do we
So-
step in mentally get that into a
And I
possibility
think
mode?
that's going to be a mindset shift. You really have to change your perspective from seeing everything as a problem
Mhm.
or that the world is working against you, which I totally get that mindset, by the way, because I feel it on a regular basis.
It had those
But instead,
days.
see it as an opportunity to do it differently, an opportunity to talk to your students and say, okay, and let's talk about a quiz. Instead of a quiz today, because divine intervention, whatever it is, divine providence.
The copier broke.
The copier broke. I couldn't make it. So here's what I'd like you to do. Let's everybody take out a blank piece of paper. I want you to think about this unit, this stuff that we've been studying, this quiz that I was going to give you. And I want you to write down everything you know. I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to give you like 7 minutes. Just brain dump everything you know. Okay? Now I want you to stand up, grab a different color pen, stand up, find a partner, and compare notes. And whatever you were missing, add to yours in that new color. They'll do the same to theirs. And now I'm going to actually show you the quiz up on the screen. I'm going to give you the answers. We're going to go through, I'm going to give you the questions. We're going to go through the answers. And in a third color, I want you to write down what you didn't include on your brain dump. And if you did include things that were on the quiz on your brain dump, you underline those, you circle them, you celebrate them with bubbles, whatever works for you.
Right.
And so this became an opportunity instead of, first of all, now I as a teacher, I was able to kind of visually, just by color, see what people were forgetting, how much they were forgetting.
You formatively assessed.
I did.
We did not plan that.
We did not plan that. I have given the students an opportunity to do some retrieval practice that goes beyond whatever my questions were. The reality is that my students probably put way more down on that paper than I was going to ask them in the quiz.
Absolutely.
And some of them are going to, because I can envision students saying, what, was this idea part of this unit? Was this in this unit? Wait, what unit are we studying?
Mm-hmm.
And they're making connections to prior knowledge that, again, I wasn't intending to assess. I think it is, we can see the copier, and of course, we're all going to have that initial moment of, are you kidding me?
Yes.
I don't have time to think of something else. Yeah.
Yes. But if we can work on catching that mindset and pivoting just a little to seeing, okay,
What do I have?
Paper. What possibility?
What do I have? Markers.
Yes. What possibility am I creating? What do I know my kids, just as Britt says, what do I know my kids actually have? What can I do with that instead? And so that is pivoting from that problem-solving mentality to possibility creating.
And I think it makes it painless because, and I think this is for me, all of a sudden I'm jazzed about this random thing I decided to do today. Like, I'm like, you know what? That was way better than the quiz. We had a great discussion. The kids were engaged.
We had a great time.
I got so much information. I was able to provide instant feedback and actionable feedback to kids. So sometimes when lessons flop or things go awry, it's kind of nice to be able to like, hey, I came up with this thing on the fly, but sometimes there are best stuff is on the fly because we're just looking at what do they need.
But on the fly really isn't on the fly.
It isn't.
You have to have some knowledge that this could be done a different way than whatever it was I was standing at the copy machine copying. So maybe a not so painless, more than a pivot, is every time you're standing there copying a worksheet or a packet for students.
You choked on that word.
I did. How could I be teaching this that doesn't involve me standing here at the copy machine? So that's a bigger issue.
Right.
But definitely, when it jams, you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? If you have some things in your toolbox, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
It really isn't totally on the fly. Usually we go, okay, hold on.
It feels on the fly because it's like 3 minutes before the bell's ringing. Right. That's what it feels like.
That's exactly.
That's why it feels like it's on the fly.
I went to a training with Julia, and I remember she did something with a big paper and we folded it into fours. Okay, I'm going to figure something out with that.
Yep. And the kids are willing to follow you if you're just honest. So, okay, let's do scenario number 2. Students are absent. They've been absent weeks because of maybe being out with COVID. They've been absent days because they've been doing some things inside the home that needed to be attended to, or maybe they're just sick and they just aren't there. A lot of teachers are feeling that students are absent so much, especially this year, that they are just in fix-it mode as far as drowning in trying to catch up these kids. Instead of fixing the problem of the catch-up, what possibility can be created for these absent kids, but also that will benefit the kids that were present as well?
Well, I think first, it's an opportunity for teachers, and I think teachers have felt this all year. If you have a kid that's out for 2 days or 3 days, and you're starting to pull the work together for that student, and
it's a stack of work together,
and it's taking you hours. You know that the work is going to take hours upon hours. I think that is a big red flag that the work is driving the instruction more than the instruction itself.
Amen, sister.
And I think that sometimes as teachers, we give the assignments and we give the work because it is a way to say, I gave it to them. And we don't trust that there are other ways for kids to learn that don't include paper and pencil. So I think that's the first thing, is just recognizing that perhaps
take a step back and look at your
this is a little too much
workload.
And man, I would envision yourself, and if you're a parent out there, you may have been on the receiving end of something like this, where your kid's gone for 2 days,
and by the way, the kid's gone and they feel horrible, and then they get a massive
amount of makeup work.
Several.
So many times.
That's coming from the parent. Sorry.
Well, and so many times in my career, a kid would come back from being ill for a long time or being out on bereavement or whatever. And I would just say, you know what, we're not going to worry about this. It's not going to affect your grade. We're going to get you caught up. And I had colleagues who were like, how can you do that? But you know what? Because what I care about is the learning. And I'm going to take this child to where he or she needs to be. It's going to be better for him. It's going to be better for me. The parents are going to be grateful. And it's not that I'm saying what I did while you were gone. When they come back, go, did you do anything important while I was gone? No, I was just saying to kids, did you do anything? Well, we ordered a pizza. Because they thought that would be fun while you were gone. Yes, we did very important things. Yeah. But those important things cannot be captured in a worksheet or a read this chapter. It's much bigger than that.
Right.
And so I would see this as a pivot that is a win for everybody. First of all, I don't know anybody who likes grading at all, but I really don't know anybody who likes grading late work. I mean, let's just be honest.
Especially if there's
Well,
just stacks and stacks.
And often by the time I would get to grading that late work, we were so far beyond
the feedback wasn't
concept.
going to matter.
Well, and I wasn't providing feedback. I was going through and check marking things. Remember, every bad thing we talk about, I have done in my 30 career. Yeah.
I would also say that when we are talking about makeup work, I know teachers panic that if they don't give it to them, they're not going to learn this concept.
Right.
And I think we have to stop and really think about any of the major learning outcomes that we need. We're cycling through multiple times. We will catch it. We should be. So if they're doing this one assignment makes or breaks their learning on a concept, we need to kind of shift our thinking to figure out, why is this one assignment the only time I'm getting this concept? And so if we can do that as teachers, then I think we can begin to look for possibilities in ways to support students. And we're not advocating, because first of all, a lot of parents want the makeup work. They want to know that their kids aren't missing learning. So we're not advocating for no support when they're absent, but we are saying, what new possibilities can you create, since student absences have become a mainstay this year?
More of a problem.
Yes, more of a problem this year. But definitely a problem. You always have kids who take a different spring break, who go on vacation for a week. You have students who are in, like at the secondary level, you have students this time, especially fourth quarter.
Field trips,
festivals,
like band festivals. Yep. There's many reasons kids are absent. And
my take is, I used to hear teachers complain all the time about, the Smith family, they couldn't wait for spring break to go to Disneyland. They had to go the week before or whatever. You know what?
Let them go.
I don't know what's going on. And I had kids who were going on not just a Disney vacation, but to Europe or something. And this was when their family could. And I'm like, you go.
Yeah.
And, I don't want you to worry about any of this work. I'll take care of it when you get
Your
back.
learning experience in Europe is going to be
far more important than anything I could give you. So again, yes, Julia, you're right. We're not excusing it, but I think that we're being more realistic and frankly less narcissistic when we realize it's not all about the packet that I created for you.
Or the Google slide or whatever. So I think the possibility that's being created, if I can summarize, is just being able to have opportunities in class to circle back to the learning that's been happening often for students. And I think that's beneficial for every kid. If you were there and you had it, circling back to that is not a bad thing, right? They should be hearing the same things in different ways consistently throughout the year. And so just think of it as don't think of it as necessarily, I have to fix this problem of late work. No, it's a possibility to circle back either through discussions, Socratic seminars, a turn and learn with a partner.
Well, we can go back to that example I gave with the notes. The
quiz. Absolutely. You could do that here.
That's a great opportunity for the kid who missed information. They're now going to see
their gaps.
Yes. And then you've made a plan, or you've talked to kids about, okay, all the stuff that you would have missed here, what can we do with it to make sure that we've learned it? And so if you're doing that retrieval practice, it's about building your lessons intentionally and always allowing for that circle back. You're not going to reteach the lesson.
No.
But if you're continually bringing up concepts through warm-ups, through connecting with, if you're giving work, if you give a old question from a previous unit or the previous week, followed by, it's just a combination of how we're setting up our plans.
And we learn when we teach. So allow students who were there an opportunity to come up with what would they teach from yesterday that was most important for the students who missed. Not the whole class time, not the whole, but that's good thinking for them, not a waste of time at all. And it helps the student who is absent.
Yeah. So I think that to make it painless, I think we just need to talk about that slight turn again from, hey, this might be a little less painful for me if I just
let it go.
Yeah.
And you were starting to say it and I interrupted you, but the turn and learn, as Wendy was getting at, the idea that you could really make different variations of this that you start each class day with after major instruction. Turn and teach a partner. And if your partner was absent, this is their opportunity to learn what they missed.
So the third scenario I want to bring up is this thing that happens to all of us all the time. And we majorly go into fix-it mode because I think a lot of us take a lot of pride in the lessons we create. And if something fails and flops and the kids tank an assessment, we want to just throw our hands up and sometimes blame kiddos. Sometimes we blame ourselves. Sometimes we blame.
Mostly we blame kids.
I would say that too, but sometimes we even blame the dang tests. That wasn't a good assessment. That wasn't okay. And it just becomes, again, this negative problem solving. And let's reframe it to what possibility can be created that we didn't see before when a lesson flops.
I'm going to keep my response short, Wendy, and you can kind of then jump off of this. The possibility that's created is an opportunity for humility.
Why is that important, Julia? Sorry, I'm taking over your job, Britt. Why is that important, Julia?
So that the kids see that we're human, that we own when we make a mistake, that we increase our credibility, which actually allows them to learn more from us. And so instead of seeing those lesson flops or assessment fails as problem-solving opportunities, sure, do you obviously need to go reteach something?
Probably.
Absolutely. But right then and there, it is an opportunity for humility and an opportunity to build credibility.
Yeah. I could not agree more. I know of a teacher right here in this district, I won't mention the school, who after sitting down with me and talking about some things decided she was going to just totally revamp her lesson for the next day. She even invited her principal in because she was so excited. Yeah, it was awful. And this is by her account.
Yes.
Awful.
And she said it was.
Right.
Yeah.
And thankfully she had a principal who was like, I'm really impressed that you gave that a try. Good job.
Which was awesome.
But basically, she came back and said to her students, that didn't work. Well, did it?
And they all were like,
oh, no.
Did not.
And although she had some things up her sleeve, they kind of planned together how they were going to move forward. Many times I would say to my students, well, that didn't work how I had hoped it would. And so, Julia, not only that humility, but the humor. To be able to say, well, I only went to college for a few years. Clearly, I missed that day. Or something that will make kids see you as human. And it also gives the possibility, as I alluded to a minute ago, for students to collaborate with you on
the problem,
why that didn't work, and what is it that we need to know, what's important from here. We need to give kids more credit.
We do, and I think that taps into something we've been talking about a lot, which is how do you create curiosity in your classroom? Well, if you're honest with kids about some of those flops, you can say, I'm really curious to know how you guys would have to learn this.
I love that idea. I'm thinking of like a flopped assessment, giving kids a group of kids each like 1 or 2 test questions and asking them to explain to you why they felt like they missed it, or that it was,
have them rewrite it.
And have them just share, because that also will you as the teacher where the misstep was. It could just be in the wording of the question.
It could be.
It could be in just a small misconception that doesn't take a full reteach.
Right.
Well, and keep in mind that it gives students a part in their learning that they deserve to have. They deserve to have that ownership. And that's very powerful for students.
So I think with this new possibility, really it's putting the students more in the driver's seat, which is what we want anyways. We want more learner-centered things, and we want students to have problem-solving opportunities. And so we always feel like we need to make a lesson. This is going to be our project-based learning lesson. And sometimes the problem-solving lesson is reworking the actual problem that happened during the past learning. And that's going to be so beneficial for everyone in the classroom. All right, the last scenario, and again, we're talking about that painless pivot. So we want to reiterate, we are not saying, hey, toss everything out the window for fourth quarter. No. Nobody has the capacity to toss everything out the window in fourth quarter. No. So can we pivot? And this is a big one. This is the last quarter, and we're working with a PLC that isn't functioning. How can we turn it into a possibility? Because I think a lot of possibilities can be born from dysfunctional situations if we can reframe it. So, we know collective teacher efficacy is it. It is the golden standard to which our students will learn the most. And so if those aren't functioning well at all, we're not only hurting ourselves. And I feel like sometimes those are the things that we carry home. Those dysfunctional PLCs come home with us, and that doesn't help our home lives either. Our PLC isn't functioning. What do we do? How can we make it a possibility creation situation?
Well, one of the first things that enters my mind is that we had to mention Dr. Hattie at some point. So with Dr. Hattie's research, teacher estimates of achievement is number one. I control my attitude. I control what's happening in my classroom. So if you have a truly dysfunctional PLC, probably not a lot you're going to be able to do to get it back on track. At the very least, take ownership for your own part. And then the other thing is that sometimes there's a pressure for a team. I see this especially with our elementary school teachers, to not only be a PLC or a grade level team or whatever, but to be best friends, where nobody's asking you to be best friends with these people, to have them over for a barbecue on the weekend. No, but you're working together for student learning. If we can put ego aside, and if we can, mellow out a little bit with our strongly held opinions in a way that will benefit students, we need to do that. Ultimately, though, we know we can only control ourselves.
Yeah, I think, again, at this point in time, year, if you've been a dysfunctional PLC, it's probably been really frustrating.
Yep, yes. We're in fourth quarter. This is
right.
We need to pivot a bit, though, to survive.
Yes. We do. So we are at that point then, like Wendy said, that really it's that recognition of I can only control where I'm at. I think it's beneficial to begin reflecting this time of year about why your PLC was dysfunctional. You guys see education in completely different lights. Do you see instruction in completely different lights?
Learning in different lights.
Yeah. How can you go to the framework for some inspiration as to what we say? Because as Wendy said, these are not your best friends. They might be.
Isn't it lovely when that happens? I have that happen. Well, and I have it happen now. Just
But I've been on ones where we are best friends and it's lovely and it's great, but I've been on ones that we're not, but we still can function.
And work together.
But then I've also been on ones that I can't function at all because it just becomes a session of bashing kids, bashing the school, bashing a principal, bashing each other. And it becomes super toxic. We need to shift the focus from, again, like Wendy was saying, ourselves to kids.
Well, and I think it's also about trying to shift the thinking within that from pastry to pasta.
Yes.
Right?
Nice pivot back to the beginning.
Yeah. That PLC, sometimes, and I agree. I mean, I've been parts of these PLCs. I've probably even been a contributor to
the complaining and the whining, and it's natural.
And it's an indulgence.
It's an indulgence
because it feels like it gets it off our chest and we feel validated that people are feeling the same way.
But then it goes too far.
Yes, at some point in time, you have to switch then to the pasta. How do we indulge in, okay, we're all feeling this, but how do we actually, like Wendy said, get back to
eat something that's going to sustain us now?
Yes, and energize us to try and look for the possibilities.
Yeah.
Instead of the problems.
And I think one of those main things is just taking more, like we've talked about, kid data. I feel like PLCs can be like dysfunctional because there's some hubris that goes into it with, I don't want to share my data. I don't want to, whatever it is, or I don't take data, or So I think bringing in kid data that is decided upon and then showing that kid data is also a way that we can shift and change into making it a new possibility. Okay. So our last painless pivot is to go from packing to placing. So let's first talk about painless packing. And we're not talking about, now some of you may have to pack up your classrooms at the end of the year, at the end of the quarter. We're talking about painlessly packing up that knowledge that you've gained from testing season, from, basically having 3 entire quarters with your kiddos. What's the knowledge that we need to pack up? How can we pack up our learning from this year? What's a good way to do that? That's not painful.
We're all believers in reflection. And reflection should not be painful. It could be melancholy, but it might not be painful. But I remember the last day of school when I was in the classroom so well. I was like the kids. Let me get in my car and let me,
the chairs are stacked in the corner and I am out.
When really to stop and think about the year. What did I learn about kids? What did I learn about learning? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about instruction? What
changes have I decided that I need to do? Like, where have I shifted in my...
Well, I think we need to sift what we spend our time reflecting on. Reflect on the things that are going to inform next year's decisions, what we're going to place into next year.
And that's why we're talking about pivoting from packing to placing.
Try not to focus on the things that, I'm going to go back to the pastry, that indulge in like either just disappointment in yourself or disappointment in your school or in the environment, the situations. We have lots of reasons to feel those thoughts as we reflect on the year, but really just sifting that reflection down to those things that will inform what we place out for our kids next year.
So how can teachers intentionally place this new learning into the following school year? Because a lot of times, and I have to say we're doing this now because I think the packing has to start now. It's really hard to start packing up your learning from the year on the last 2 weeks of school because you're just like, you're just not in that mind. You're in vacation mode. So like, we're talking right now, start packing up, jotting those things down on a Post-it near your desk that you think, that was a really key thing that I need to take into
and I think
next
more
year.
than a Post-it. And my two colleagues here can attest that I am not an organized gal. But there needs to be some form for you to put it in so that after you've been sitting by the pool all summer, you've got the Disneyland or the northern coast of Oregon, wherever it is that you may be going.
You can refer back to it.
You can refer back because I don't remember a lot.
Maybe we'll put out a template or two of that.
Okay.
Oh, you guys rock.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more I would do it on a Post-it and then transfer it into something because I wouldn't.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think you can jot things down.
Because I'm like, I need to, and then I need to return. But yes.
For me, if I just did it on a Post-it, heaven knows where that could
Yes, I guess it depends.
Or just some guidance in asking myself the right questions.
So we'll put something out. We'll put something out.
Tends to look back and see all the catastrophic stuff of the year.
Who would that be?
Can't be. I have lots of catastrophic thinking.
Okay.
It's helpful if someone asks me the right questions.
Yeah.
So that will guide really what I think about.
So then that way we could talk about how then to intentionally place the learning into the next school year.
And frankly, I think this would be a great thing to do with a functional PLC.
Well, and it might be something to bring to a dysfunctional PLC to help focus it into a functional
Especially
PLC.
if you know you're going to be with those same
That
people
same
next year.
PLC. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So the hope is that these pivots are, again, a slight turn to turn around whatever it is that needs to be turned in order to come through fourth quarter feeling refreshed and refocused. If we combine the three, pivoting to pasta, pivoting to possibilities, and pivoting to placement, the goal would to be able to set up some healthy habits that lead into next year. However, what would you suggest to teachers that are just like, I'm hearing you, but all of these seem out of reach for me right now?
And I know that there are going to be people out there who do think that all of this is out of reach. And I don't know that this will be the same thing that either of you will say, but I would say give yourself some grace and let it go then. I have found in my life that when I let things go, they come to me. It's when I'm all balled up trying to do something. I can't, and nothing happens. But the moment I say, you know what, never mind, I don't really care. Oh,
there it is.
I have an idea.
Well, that's the brain research supports that.
Oh, here she goes.
I know.
Very favorite topic right now.
I won't go into great detail, but the research actually shows that when you're focused on solving a problem or you're focused on something, it's intentionally reaching into your long-term memory for specific things that it can connect to that problem. But if you actually walk away from it and do something completely different, this is why a lot of people have their best ideas in the shower. Your brain goes into this like wandering mode. And so it starts searching all over your long-term memory for random things and just just as Wendy said, sometimes it kind of solves itself, or it comes to you, the idea comes to you while you're focusing on it. So yeah, I agree with Wendy. There's got to be some grace. I think if you're stuck there and you feel really stuck in that place, I would focus just on pastry to pasta. Because part of getting unstuck is recognizing that we've fallen into that repeated behavior of just feeling stuck. Find something that inspires you, find a piece of reading, look into, start looking into some research, just to get you out of the current mindset you might be in and making that shift.
And I have almost all of my friends are in education. My family's in education. And sometimes we'll decide that we're going to meet for coffee or have lunch, without any intention of discussing educational things. But you know how it goes. It all comes back around to that. That's how I've had some great revelations and some insight. Let it go for now and then think, you know what, I'm going to see if so-and-so wants to go to lunch in early June. And we're going to talk about our families and our summer plans, but maybe, just maybe, something will come up. Again, Julia's brain research would prove that may happen.
And I also just think listening to this episode and knowing pivots are available to you, even if you're not able to get to them right now, the seed has been planted that like, hey, I could just slightly pivot this thing and it could be different, but that might just come to you again in the shower, folding socks, driving in the car, and that's okay. Just let it come as it comes. Our hope is just to give some ideas on how to reframe some of these things so that next year you come back and you feel stronger. All right, let's go into rapid fire. I'm going to have you fill in the blank. Julia, teaching is
complex.
The most important job in the world, which is why it's so complex and stressful.
Yep. Okay.
And I mean, other than parenting. Parenting's first class and really a job. You know what I mean?
I know what it is. This is my second shift. Okay. What was something you would do during this time of the year as a teacher that would help yourself pivot and refresh?
This was the time of year that I got really excited for the next year. My brain was already moving that way. And I think it would remind me what's really beautiful about education is that every year is a clean slate.
Yeah.
It's a new opportunity. It's a fresh start. You can change everything in the world if you want. And, nobody would know any different. So I think I was starting to get excited. It was a way for me to acknowledge my mistakes from the year without doing it in a way that bogged me down, but I got excited for what I would change.
Invigorated you to make some new possibilities.
I knew there was a fresh start on the horizon. Sometimes I know, like going into winter break, sometimes I would feel like I got to come back. I need to reset some things, but it's the same group. And so it's not a complete reset or restart. That July or August start time is that beautiful reset that you get every year.
Yeah.
I think I took a lot of naps. Seriously. I would start getting really tired at this time of year. And I sleep really well. I nap really well. It's a talent.
But those are the times I think your brain is saying, hey, stop, you know, and even I remember I did start to have those moments with kids where I'm like, we need a day to just be creative. So it was still rigorous. It would be like, okay, let's create a poster, a spring poster, because I try to thematically do it, but like, okay, so some type of spring theme, people, let's do some retrieval practice. That's not what I called it, but I would say, okay, let's take our main learning from the year. I felt like in this quarter, there were more opportunities for me to kind of stop and do that with kids. And I think I did it more in a selfish way because I really wanted to see kind of what they did pull out. But honestly, now thinking back, it was pretty good for them too. But it was a moment for them to just kind of have that creativity of, I loved how they would write what they've learned and make them into different types of flowers and how the flowers would metaphorically represent this concept. And it was just some kind of way for them to refresh as well and celebrate what they'd learned. So
I agree. And I think what you're capturing too is that you've established that credibility with them. You've also taught them so much.
Yeah, it's time to kind of pull back a bit.
You have that freedom to change on the fly.
Yeah.
And they can follow you,
and there's still new learning, but it's like opportunities to just be like, yeah, okay, let's just breathe and let's do something with that breath. What word do you have a hard time pronouncing?
For me, it's not one word. It's me trying to say too much at once, too fast.
Okay.
Or lately, I say the wrong word a lot. So like this morning, I couldn't. My kids had to eat breakfast in the car, and I told my daughter that I put her medicine underneath her lunch, which meant under her breakfast. And
you can't pull the right word right now.
I do that all the time because my brain's already thinking forward to, I just put their lunch boxes away. And so I say the...
Oh, man. Yeah, I relate to that.
There isn't one single word. I pronounce quite well, actually, if I do say so myself. But when I start getting really tired, as these ladies can attest, then I'm like, what word is that I'm trying to say? So more evidence for now.
Mine's Worcestershire.
Worcestershire.
See, I can't say that. All right.
Worcestershire.
See, I just said the W one.
I don't say Worcestershire. I say Worcestershire. So apparently I don't say it correctly.
You don't think you say it correctly just because you don't say it like I do? Oh, please.
Hello, you're the cook.
Lady, and you're the word lady.
We'll go look it up as soon as
All right, when we're done. What is something people often get wrong about you?
Yeah, I'll go first. People think that it's my deal that I'm an extrovert, that I'm really out there.
So true. Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so when I say introvert, they're like, no, you're not. I'm like, oh, yeah, seriously, I am.
Don't you love when people tell you something that you're not?
Yeah, it's kind of a little insulting.
Yeah, like you don't know me.
I'm okay when people are surprised.
Yes.
But I have had people
like aggressively
say, no, you're not. I'm like, actually,
yeah, no, I'm an introvert. Thanks.
So, yeah, that's, I think, the biggest thing that kind of
people get wrong.
Get wrong.
Julia?
I think that a lot of times people think I'm more serious than I am.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, you're definitely not as serious, I think, as people think you are.
I can be goofier than people think, or that I'm more put together than I am.
Oh my gosh, that's true for all of us. Look at those ladies teaching, and we're like,
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say about you. When we were going to start working together here, I thought, I'm going to have to tone it down for Julia. Yeah, I haven't had to tone anything down. She has a great sense of humor.
Yeah. And then last question, what is the last, and I kind of listed because we all are very different. What is the last book or blog or article or social media post or whatever that the last one that you read and loved? I know you're still reading this one, but feel free to plug it.
Yeah, again, I think I plugged it in an earlier one. I'm still going on my brain book, but it's called Uncommon Sense Teaching. And it is so fascinating, and I feel like it makes everything we try and teach teachers works best with students. It makes it make sense. Right? Like, we know why a metaphor brainstorm, like, we know it's rigorous, we know they're making connections. But when you can actually understand the brain science behind it, it just feels very justifying, and then also very educational, because there's a lot of things that I know personally I've not thought of.
Yeah.
Or I've discredited.
Yeah.
When they're actually
you're just like in this book. I got a copy and it's coming, and I can't wait to read it too.
Well, and she's just been teaching, and she even got up in front of the whiteboard today.
Yes, this morning we got a whole lesson. It was fabulous.
There was an octopus.
We are
opera singer. Yeah.
You know what? We are nerds. That part nobody could get wrong about us, right?
Right. All right. What are you reading?
Okay, so I feel a little embarrassed, but I have been doing a lot of reading about Russia and Ukraine.
That's not. Why are you embarrassed about that?
I don't know, because it's not educational.
I said article or blog post.
I know, but I should say something about. Well, I've been reading the educational.
No. This is the honesty podcast.
I've been trying to understand better.
Yeah.
What's happening there, and I'm always fascinated by human emotions and human reactions and how we cope with trauma and difficulties in our lives. And so I've actually been pretty obsessed.
Well, I think that is informing things that you're thinking about and in your life, and it floods into education. All right, ladies, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about these painless pivots. And we hope that the listeners got an idea of like, oh, I could do that. I could just shift that into next quarter and feel like I can survive and get into summer. Again, we don't want to be overwhelming. So they just need to be just slight shifts to get you through, but also to fuel you, like Julia said with the pasta, to feeling full and ready to move into summer. And summer is such a great time to
But
do that
still,
stop.
You can go to the bakery.
And yes, go to the bakery during the summer, but you can still go to the bakery. But that time for summer is to stop and let yourself digest and figure out what to do. So in the next episode, we're going to be discussing the assess domain of our instructional framework. So if you've been following along, we have done an episode on connect. We've done an episode on instruct. We've
Design.
also, design and instruct. So we've got those 3 completed. You can go back and listen to any of those if you want to catch up. Again, this is our district's instructional framework, but honestly, what's in there is applicable to every single teacher and every single kid. So we would love for you guys to join us in 2 weeks when we talk about assess and assessment in classrooms. And this is not necessarily summative assessment.
It'll be much more interesting.
Yes, and so we're going to go into a lot of different types of assessment, maybe a little bit painless ways to do some assessment. Yes. So grab a pastry, indulge a little bit. Don't forget to balance that out with your pasta and
pastry shop will do that. I really like myself.
Raise up and
at Hickley and Global.
okay, yeah, they're gonna love us. I'm gonna tag them in this so they give us free pastries.
They're not paying me or anything.
Seriously, they're not, but we love them. Welcome back from spring break, and you guys got this. We got this. You can do it. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Learning Unlocked and finding out more about painless pivots you can make to get yourself ready to end this school year, but also focus yourself into what you really want to accomplish in the next school year. If you have listened today as a GPS educator, you can receive PD recertification credit by visiting our Employee Hub page and navigating to professional growth and then digital PD courses. Just a reminder that we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GPS Prof Growth. That's at GPS PROF GROWTH. For more information or resources from this episode, please visit our website at learningunlocked.libsyn.com/website. We are distributed by Libsyn, LIBSYN, to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Audible. Episodes are available on our PGD YouTube channel under playlists. Our intro and outro music are licensed from Melody Loops. Thanks again, key holders. Keep unlocking curiosity, creativity, and innovation with your students. Stay kind and courageous. Take care of yourself and the ones you love. And we'll see you next time to talk about assessment.